Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about recording guitars on the DP-008EX. And this is going to be a lot like any other recording process or mixing process, live mixing or whatever. The principles are basically the same, and that's going to be getting the signal into the guitar, from the guitar into the machine, obviously, and that's going to be through a couple different ways, potentially. On the DP-008EX, if you want to, you can just go straight in the built-in microphones that are on here, and they're like small capsule condenser microphones, and you can use those. And like, say you've got either an acoustic guitar or you've got a guitar amp playing in a room, you can just play right into the machine, and you don't really need to do anything. You don't need to mic it up if you don't want to, and that's it. Only gain stage is there. We'll talk about gain staging a little bit. Is going to really be the ambient sound in the room and how close that is to the microphones, and then your trim knob, and that's basically your gain knob on the machine. And unlike a traditional mixer that you'd normally see, where you've got a gain knob on top that dictates how much input is allowed or amplified, and then you've got a trim knob on the bottom, basically, or a fader on the bottom, that also dictates how much signal gets to the outboard bus or the SD card in the case of something like a Tascam Model 24 or 12 or 16. This one on this doesn't dictate the signal in any way except for monitoring. So you really only have two gain stages in that case, and really it's subjective because it's in the open air. I mean, it's the guitar playing in a room. The only gain stage is really this one, and how close you get to the thing and how much signal you can hear from the guitar. So like if you backed way up, then you'd get a lot of noise because you'd hear room noise and the fan and hiss, and So you want to get as close to the machine as you can to where you're not distorting it. And of course your VU meters, you don't want them going off the chart. But this one over here doesn't affect it. You can record with this completely off, and the VU meters will still be going and you'll still be recording. So keep that in mind, that this is just a monitor stage. It's not a gain stage. It doesn't go to the card. It doesn't record more gain because you turn this up. So that's very basic to understand. And that goes for anything coming into the machine. The only knob that really matters is this trim knob, as far as how much you amplify whatever signal's coming in. So there's really your basic gain stage theory. Now, if you have a guitar plugged directly in, so let's say you're going in, to one of the, external inputs. In particular, we'll talk about this one here that has this little switch next to it, says line mic and guitar. Then you've got a couple gain stages, and that is, how much are you turning the guitar up? It's got a knob on it, So let's just say you've just got a guitar that has a knob on it, whether it's an electric acoustic or a regular electric guitar. Now, electric acoustic, you're talking about, multiple gain stages there. On an electric guitar, strictly speaking, you've just got one knob to turn up on the guitar, and that's your first gain stage. So depending on how low or high you've got that, you're going to get a certain amount of signal. If it's very low, you plug a regular electric guitar in here, you're just going to get, a lot of noise and a very weak signal. You got to turn it up, and get the pickups pushing out more voltage, and you'll get more sound, obviously. And then when you come over here, here's your second stage, and you decide and determine how much you need to turn that up, and watch your VU meters, and just don't let them go in the stratosphere. Let them get up there pretty high, but don't clip or you'll get distortion. Pretty simple and basic. Now, if you've got a lot of signal coming in, really hot pickups, or you've hooked up some sort of an amplifier like a distortion pedal or something like that, you might want to try engaging the guitar switch here. And what that does is increases the amount of resistance that the unit applies to the track by, it goes from I think 10,000 ohms up to 1,000,000 ohms. And it sounds like a lot, but in a lot of cases you'll turn this switch on and off and you won't hear a huge difference. Like with my P90s on this one guitar, when I turn it on and off, it just barely dips. It quiets it down a tiny bit. So that's really, all the theory that you need to understand about gain staging as far as going into this device and how to get a good, strong, clean signal. And that is to get either really close to the external inputs or go into an external input. Now, obviously, there's another way to go in. We'll talk about that in a minute, but that would even be through the XLRs, and maybe you've got a bass amp that you're playing through and you want to go direct in, and play like that. You might want to do that, or some guitars even have it. Some guitar amps even have an XLR out and you can plug into there. There's a little bit of a difference between that and the external line input, the jack, and that is the amount of resistance once again, and the amount of gain. The gain is different too, the input gain. I think it goes from 6 dBs to 8 dBs. So there's a difference between the two. So you just, you have to just understand which one sounds best and use it, whatever way you prefer. The next thing is noise. People say, well, my recording's noisy, it's staticky, it's got, some strange sounds or whatever. The biggest problem with a guitar in any scenario is going to be interference through. Typically, the guitar itself can be like an antenna for sounds and the pickups and everything, and then a cord, your guitar cable. And some people will say, well, this guitar cable here is shielded and, costs, it's a Mogami and it costs $150 and it's better than this little cheap one I bought from, Sweetwater Sound or Musician's Friend or something. And to some degree that's true, but it's still a single signal going into one piece of wire going into this, which can accept interference much easier than other ways of putting the signal in. So what you got is basically a big antenna. The longer the cable, the more interference. So if you got a short cable, the shorter the cable going in, the better, less noise. There's other ways to get around that. One of my favorite ones is to use a wireless system. So then you eliminate that cable completely. And these things are, pretty nice. If you don't like it and you say, well, no, my tone isn't right, then okay, use the cable. It's your guitar and your sound. But that will eliminate a lot of problems, as far as RF interference and noise and your ham operator neighbor coming through your, you can't stop that in certain instances. Like if you got a tube amp, you know what I'm talking about. You hear that guy, and it's either your amp or it could be your cable. Try eliminate cable, but I've had my amp just sitting there with the guitar not plugged in and can hear it. It gets into the circuitry. So some things you just can't eliminate, and that can be a problem when you're recording. You're like trying to do a session and you got some crazy interference, but you work around it. Go through something solid state, or there's other ways to do things, but sometimes you just got to wait for, the right opportunity. But anyway, so I like these. They're really great. They cut out, the problem. You can use an XLR cable like we were talking about earlier. It has 2 wires in it that deliver the sound, and that's why they're used in like long runs. So you'll see bands or something, and a lot of this stuff is basic to some of you guys. You're not even going to listen to this, but using an XLR cable is important because it sends 2 signals, the signal you're actually sending and then that actual signal flipped 180 degrees out of phase. And then any machine that accepts an XLR will take both those signals and take the flipped out of phase one and put it back in phase and then say, okay, this is the only signal we accept. We don't want any other noises that may have gotten into this cable. So it eliminates and rejects, for the most part, exterior sound. So you could have a cable as long as 1,000 feet and have a good clean signal. So you might want to try that, but when it comes down to it, there's really no reason to do that if you've got a wireless, because there's no cable to have anything get involved with it, and so you don't need to bother. Now if you're on a stage and it's very, very far away, you might not be able to plug this thing right into the mixer because the mixer's far away. Or if you're in like an isolation booth and this recorder is far away and you're not getting good signal with this, then your next option is to use a direct box. And a lot of people like a direct box anyway, something like, I've got this LR Bags, parametric EQ direct box. And what it'll do is, other than what we were just talking about, take your signal and turn it from that single wire into the XLR wire and sending that out into your device. It also sound shapes and gives you some boost. So now you get another gain stage, so you can boost the signal a little bit, and you can shape the sound with the EQ, notch out stuff, and put more bass on the bottom or whatever you want to do. So this machine will do that in post, but not as good as having it come straight in and getting the sound direct. So That's another option. So you might want to use a direct box. And once again, going to the direct box can be a problem, because there you again have a cable, and you're running a cable to the direct box, but then the XLR to either the mixer or the recorder here, you can use, once again, the wireless to the direct box. And so plug the receiver into the direct box, the transmitter in your guitar, and then run the XLR cable to either the recorder or your mixer, and you're good to go. And you're going to have, the best, cleanest signal you can possibly have. And that's really all there is to it. I mean, those are the basic fundamentals. Gain staging and getting clean signal into the machine are, obviously the only thing you really need to concern yourself with, other than, practicing and having talent. Anyways, so it's just a basic primer on recording guitars into the DP-008EX, or really any recorder, or any live mixer. So there you go, guys. See y'all later.